Hello there, welcome to Technique Tuesday, a first Technique Tuesday for Artful Geek Girl. This is an Artful Geek Girl step-by-step video on jelly plate to packing tape transfer. Now, I'm sure that this is a technique that a lot of you probably have already heard of, but I'm new to jelly plates. I just bought this 3x5 little jelly plate and I haven't used it that much, and I just saw this technique for transferring what's on your jelly plate to a piece of packing tape that can then be used in your creations. So I decided to videotape it as I was doing my first one. And so you see here that I've gotten out my jelly plate. I've put it on top of a piece of white paper so that you can see better what I'm doing. And I'm taking some deli paper strips and just kind of adhering them so that I can mask off a few areas on the jelly plate before I start applying any paint. Say hello to Fiona. Yeah, she's there to say hello. She likes to catch her 5 minutes of fame every time I'm recording. So now I'm going to pull out some, I think this is Indian yellow and some deep orange paint. One's by Liquitex, one's by Golden. They're both heavy body paints. And I'm going to take my little brayer and I'm just going to spread that out really thinly. And you can see those little pieces of deli paper lifting up. They were the bane of my existence in this project, but I managed to put them back. But what I was going to say was, in order to get those thin layers, you can take your brayer and take off some paint and then go over that jelly plate surface again, and it'll take up some more. You want a really thin layer because in between each one of these steps you have to wait for the paint to absolutely dry. And you can see that I took up too much paint once I added my deli paper strip again, so then I had to put the Indian yellow down again. Trial and error, this is how we all learn, and I do more errors than most. So then you have to wait for this to dry, which takes a little bit. You can see in my impatience I kept touching it. Is it dry yet? Is it dry yet? Hello, is it dry yet? Finally I decide I've got to set it aside and work on something else. I decided I'm going to pull out some of the colors that I'm going to use, or that I think that I'm going to use. I pull out the fluid acrylics and decide that I'm going to use the yellow and the magenta. And I start with the yellow, and the fluid acrylics really apply so much thinner because they're a thinner bodied paint anyways, but I had a much easier time, and it didn't seem to pull up those little pieces of deli paper quite so much. So then I'm going to take a stencil, and this is a 6x6 stencil by Crafters Workshop, and a sheet of blank cardstock, and I'm just going to rub over that because I want to get that impression in there. And that's what that's going to do, is that's going to pull paint off from the jelly plate underneath. And as you can see, it lifted the orange too, so obviously I was way too impatient and didn't wait long enough for it to dry, because if the bottom layer had been dried, that orange wouldn't have been lifted quite the same way. And of course it lifted my deli paper strips again, so I had to put those back in place. I kind of got used to putting them back in place after a while. But you can see that harlequin pattern that is on that jelly plate, which is really cool because we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to apply more layers, which the new color is going to show through that harlequin pattern, as you'll see when we finish. Now I'm using that magenta fluid acrylic, and again lifting up that tiny piece of deli paper. I just tried to apply around it. And then of course I didn't start the camera back up, and so you didn't get to see me take the cover of a Advil bottle and create these white circles with white acrylic paint. And I waited for those to dry, and I've taken this buff titanium heavy bodied, it's a Liquitex Basics on the top, and then some more of that Indian yellow. I love that Indian yellow. hue. It is beautiful, and I mixed some of that in there as well and created another layer. And you can see me taking a little bit off. I was a little heavy-handed with it. So I'm removing just a little bit, and every time you see the brayer disappear, I'm brayering that onto a piece of deli paper that I'm sure I will use in another project at some point. So now it was time for me to lift those pieces of deli paper, and you can see we have some blank spots, which is going to come in handy, and it's going to be awesome when we do this lifting method. So I waited for everything to dry, grabbed my packing tape, and I'm going to lay the packing tape right over the top in 3 different layers, right over the top of my jelly plate and that built up paint design that I've got there. And you know, I thought this back of it was really pretty cool to look at, so I'm like, gee, even if it comes out like this, that's pretty cool. But I was pleasantly surprised. I took my brayer. I wanted this packing tape to be really adhered. You want to make sure that you really press it down and you get it in all of the spots. You want to be able to pull this up and have all of that paint come right off. It's almost like cleaning your jelly plate, which is really cool. And now I am going to slowly peel back, and you can see even then I had to take an old credit card and keep pressing down so that I could pull that up in one piece. But how cool is that? Can you see that? And that is just totally awesome. And that's not even the end of it. And as you pull it back, you can continue to press down on it if there are pieces that aren't. And the fact that a few of the little pieces didn't come up actually worked in my favor, because I've got some more clear spots that are going to show through, and you're going to see in a minute exactly what I do with those clear spots, because those clear spots are still sticky. That's the packing tape that actually is still there. And even though this video is like, I sped this video up about 4 times, so think of how slowly I pulled that off from that jelly plate. You have to go very slowly. I was going to try to cut the tape here, but it was obvious it wasn't going to cut, so I'm like, all right, I'm just going to move on. It's very sticky, and it's very hard to work with at this point. So then I'm just going to lay that down, and I am going to grab, I did manage to take a little piece of tape off. I'm going to grab my foil. Now this is that wonderful gold foil that is being used with the laminators and whatever, and I am just going to lay my sheet over the top of this creation, and I'm going to burnish it down because I want that tape to pick up the gold everywhere that the sticky is. How awesomely cool is that, huh? I mean, for all of you that are like me that love that shiny gold or shiny metallic look with everything, it is just totally awesome. And then you can see when I pulled that off, I pulled apart 2 pieces of tape, but that was okay because I didn't have plans to use this in one piece. But I just kept going over it in places where the tape was still showing, and took that gold foil and just kept foiling all of those places where there were still sticky spots. And you can see that even those little teeny spots where the paint didn't pull up from my jelly plate now are golden, because I'm just pressing this down and burnishing it on, and it's picking up that gold. So you've got all of this gold in with this beautiful orange and red, and you can even still see the circles through, and you can see the harlequin pattern in some places. It just came out beautifully. I was so excited that I can't wait to do this some more. I immediately cut it up and used it on an ATC card. You can see the whole thing here. And isn't it just lovely? It's just pieces of that I've used on this card, but absolutely gorgeous. Wonderful technique. Hope you enjoyed this video.